All right, good morning, guys. Today we'll be continuing with our application. So we did databases the last time. Today we're going to do project setup. We're going to create a new project for the website. We're going to create a GitHub repo and all of that. I don't think we've created a GitHub repo yet. So without wasting much time, I'm going to switch over to GitHub real quick. So this is my GitHub account. I'm going to create this project under the Abava organization, and it's going to be public. So if you miss something, you can just go back and look at it. So I'll just say new. What do we name this repository? I'm going to name it Estate App. Well, you're free to name it whatever you want. So I'm going to name mine Estate App, and then for the description, I'll say Estate App like https://propertypro.ng. So that's done. I'm going to make this public so anyone can access it. Yes, I want to initialize this repo with a readme. Add gitignore, like I told you guys, I'm going to add a Visual Studio gitignore file, and the license is going to be MIT license, so anyone can just take the code and use however they want. Great. I'll just say create repository. And awesome, we have a repository. Next step is to clone it and add our project to it. Clone. All right, so I'm just going to cd repos. I like to keep my projects in the repos folder, and then I'll say git clone and the link. I want to clone this with SSH, so I'll switch to SSH. You're fine to use HTTPS. Okay. I'll clone it into so we see that has cloned. I'll switch to the folder cd estate app, and I see that all cloned here. Now the way I like to work on the dev branch and then merge my changes from the dev branch into the master branch at each major checkpoint. So I'm just going to switch to a dev branch. Git checkout b dev, because I'm creating the branch. I don't already have the branch. So I switch to the dev branch. I'm just going to push this so the dev branch is created. Git push origin dev. Awesome. So if we come here and refresh, we now have two branches. We have master and dev. So dev is kind of where it's going to, like, our work in progress is going to be on dev, and then whenever we hit a major milestone, we're going to put it on master. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and create the folder. So like I mentioned, I like to have two folders. One folder called SRC, which is pronounced source, which is the folder that's going to hold all the code for the project, and then another folder called DOC, pronounced documentation, which is going to hold all the files that basically help people get to know what we're doing here. So any information we need to put down is going to be there. So the command to create it directly from the command line is mkdir. So I'll say mkdir src mkdir, and then mkdir doc, and that's awesome. Now I'll open up this in Visual Studio Code. And we see all of our folders are there. They're just all empty now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create, I'm going to go into this SRC folder, and I'm going to create a new project. So I'll say, now one thing I want you guys to know, when you create a new C# project, never ever create a project with a space in the name. It's going to give you problems later, maybe when you want to deploy it, maybe when you have to switch to the folder, but never create a C# project with a space in the name. Use Pascal casing. So Pascal casing is having the first character of each word uppercase with no space between them. So now I'm going to say .NET new -n estate app. Notice what I did here. There's no space here. Never put a space between the name of a project, a C# or .NET project. So .NET new -n estate app, and I'll hit enter. Oh, sorry, I forgot MVC. So .NET new MVC -n estate app. And if I come into VS Code, I see the project has been created, and it has finished restoring the NuGet packages. To verify that this works, I'm going to cd into estate app ls, and I'll go .NET run just to verify that everything works. Okay, so application is now running. I'm going to take the HTTP endpoint. I'll just grab it from here, and let's verify that this works. Awesome. Now, before we proceed, we want to be able, like I mentioned, we want to be able to see our work like in the browser. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into Azure, Microsoft Azure now, and we're going to host this application. So we don't just access it locally, but we can access it from anywhere. So even our phones and whatever. And as we continue to build out the application, we can just test it from the browser itself. Now, what is Azure? I'm just going to Google Azure or Microsoft Azure. Azure is a color, but there's a color called Azure. But Microsoft Azure is a cloud hosting platform, a cloud computing platform. And what it simply means is that we're taking our code and we're putting it on someone else's computer, and then we're serving our application from there. To explain, I want you to take a look at this app that we created. This app is running on our system, and we have a link to this app. But currently, we can't give this link to someone else to browse to our website with. Although our system can function as a full web hosting server, and that is what it's doing now. Our system is actually hosting this application we're building, and it is possible for us to configure our system so that other applications from or other users from other browsers in their own systems can access this application. It is completely possible, and if we do that, our system becomes something called a server. So then other people from other places can access applications running on our system. But the reason we don't do that is that for a system to be a server, it has to be permanently online. So your system can never go off, because if it goes off, people will not be able to access that web page. Your system can never run out of data, because if it can't connect to the internet, then people cannot access that web page. There's just a lot of things to consider when you decide to use your own server. So what's the alternative? The alternative is using cloud computing platforms like Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft Azure has computers in places called data centers. So let's just Google data center. According to Wikipedia, a data center is a dedicated space with a building or group of buildings used to house computer systems and associated components, right? So Microsoft Azure has a lot of data centers that has computers or servers that are permanently connected to the internet. They are assuring you that these computers are never going to go down. They are always going to be connected to the internet, and they have several data centers. So even if one data center goes down, your application is still available in different data centers right? So what we do when we use a platform like Azure is that we build our application on our own system and then we put it on their own system because we're sure that their systems never go down. And that's the simple thing with the cloud. It means taking your application or your workloads and putting it on someone else's system. That really is what the cloud is. So now I said we're going to host this application. I expect that we all have a Microsoft Azure account by now. I mentioned it in the last video. So if you do, go to portal.azure.com. So go to portal.azure.com and sign in. If you don't see this page, you'll probably see something like create a subscription or something. If you don't already have a subscription, then you won't be able to follow along. You can create the free trial, which gives you about $200 worth of credit to use, which is more than enough for this session. So what we need to do is to create something called an Azure Web App. Now there are different ways to host your applications, but we're going to use one of the simplest and most straightforward approach for this tutorial series, which is called using an Azure Web App. So the way to do it, we'll come to create a resource. So this blade here says create a resource. We'll click on create a resource and we're going to come down to let's look at compute. Okay, no, it's not compute. Okay, web. So we have web here, and then we want to create a web app. So this is web app here, and then we just select web app. Great. So it's asking, oh, what subscription do I want to create this in? If you're using the free trial subscription, then you're going to have a free trial here instead of pay as you go, as I do. I'm simply going to select pay as you go. If you don't have a resource group, just click create new and type the name of the resource group you want to create. A resource group holds related entities, and then I can just manage them together. So if I create a database for this website, I want to put that database in the same resource group. Like the name follows, it's a group of resources. So I put related things in the same resource group. It just helps you logically manage things together. I already have a resource group here called dev. So I'm going to select dev. Now I need to pick a name for my web app. Now names must be unique across Azure. So I'll try estate app and see if someone is already using that. Wow, marvelous. No one is using this, so I'll pick this. By the time you watch this video, if you try to use estate app, someone else, I would already be using it. So you have to pick something else, maybe estate app 1 or estate app 2 or whatever. So I'm just going to use estate app. Yes, I want to publish code. The runtime stack, we're running a .NET Core 1.3 application. So you select .NET Core 1.3. I want it to run on Linux because .NET Core runs everywhere and I prefer running on Linux. What else? So region, I'm going to put this in South Africa. So I mentioned data centers. Microsoft has data centers in a lot of places. Now these are the different places where they have large data centers, and we see that South Africa North is one of their data centers. Now, how do you know where to host your application? Like which data center should you put your application in? You should put your application in a data center that is closest to where your users are. So if we're building an estate app that we want Nigerians to use, we want to put it in South Africa. Because what that is if South Africa is closer to us. I can't remember now if South Africa is closer or if London is closer, but I'm going to put this in South Africa. Now, what happens when you go to a website with your phone or your browser is a call is actually made to your service provider, say MTN, and MTN needs to figure out where that application is on the internet. And if the application is in South Africa, MTN network makes a call all the way to South Africa. It gets those pages and it sends it back to you. All of this happens within milliseconds, so you don't notice, but it does happen. So then if you host your application in a data center in Russia, it would obviously take more time for your application to be returned to the browser. So it's best for you to put the application closest to where your users are. And this is what is called latency or latency. So the time it takes for the round call from browser or phone to your application and back is called application latency. So you want to host your application in the places that are closest to your users. I'm going to go ahead and select South Africa North because I want it in South Africa North. And then app service plan, you don't need to worry about what this is now. We'll explain it in a subsequent, but it basically determines what resources are available to your application. Okay, how many people can your application serve at the same time, and all of those things. And then when you realize, okay, my application is growing, you come in and you increase your app service plan, but then that's going to cost more money. Remember to use this change size. So this is basically the size of the computer they're going to put your application in. And then you see by default, it wants to put my application in a system with 3.5 gigabytes of memory, and all of this cool stuff. Well, I really don't need this for a test application, and this is really expensive. So I'm going to select dev tests, and I'm going to use the free. Okay, so I can use the free version here. I'm just going to go ahead and use this one. It's going to cost me about $13 a month, but okay, it said it's even free for the first 30 days. Awesome. So I can just use it for the whole of this thing. But if you have the free subscription because you just created your Azure account, you can go ahead and create this. So select dev test and select the size. So basically, the larger or the more powerful your web app is, the more users it can respond to. If you start to get millions of users using your application and you realize that, oh, my application is no longer powerful enough to support these users, you can just come in here and change it to something larger. And this is another advantage of cloud computing, right? If you're using your own physical server, and let's say you have a physical server that has maybe 4 gigs of RAM, and you're sure that it will always be connected to the internet and nothing is going to happen to it, eventually you're going to have a lot of users, and then you will have to switch that machine. Maybe you have to turn it off and change the RAM or something. But in the cloud, you can just come in here and just change the size of your machine, and you just pay more money for it. So I'm going to select B1. I'm going to click apply. I'll go ahead and say review and create. So everything checks out. I'm going to say create. It's going to take a while to create, and that's it. While it's creating, I'll just continue talking about Azure. You see, we have a lot of options here. I can create a database up in Azure, and we're going to use it. So our database is going to be in Azure. We can create a virtual machine. So I can actually create a second computer with a UI and all of that in Azure and just use it as if I am using my own computer. There's a lot of things we can do with Azure. There are load balancers, which is kind of out of the scope of our conversation here, and all of that. Azure is one of the best cloud hosting platforms out there. It's one of the most expensive too, but most .NET companies work with Azure, so it's best that I introduce you guys to Azure because this is what you encounter in your day-to-day work. We're just going to wait for this to, okay, it says deployment succeeded. Let's click on go to resource, and we see that it has created an estate app. I'm just going to go ahead and click browse here and see it has given me a URL to the estate app. I'm going to copy this URL and I'll paste it. And we'll just give it a minute. It's taking a while because this is the first time we're browsing to it, so it's where it's still booting up. I'm going to stop this application. Okay, so we see it says, hey, .NET Core developers, your app service is on, and so our app service is ready. If I come to all resources here, you see I have two things here. I have the app service plan, which basically talks about how large my box is or how large my app service is. And then I have the app service itself actually here. And this is a container that's going to hold our code, right? I can hit browse and basically just go to the application. Now, how do I replace this default page that Microsoft has put here with my own application? The first thing I'm going to do is to come here and actually commit. So I'll say I haven't committed my changes after I added the project. So I'll say git commit m added project. Oh, I have to add first. Cd cd and I'll say git add dot, clear this, and I can then commit added project. Perfect. Now, how do I take this application that I have running locally on my system and put it in Azure? There are a lot of ways to do it, but I'm going to show you guys one of the simplest. You don't have to install any extra tool for it. You don't need Visual Studio or any of those complex workloads. All you have to do is come into Azure, go to All Resources, click on the application you want to deploy to, then come here to Deployment and click on Deployment Center. Right, so it's asking me how do I want to deploy. I'm going to say I want to deploy from my local Git repo. Now, there are a lot of ways to do this, but I'm going to deploy from my local Git repo. We could deploy from GitHub, and we're going to take a look at this later. But just to keep things very simple now, I'm going to deploy from my local Git repo. I'll say continue. How do I want to do it? Do I want to use Azure Pipelines, or this is called Kudu? I'll say I want to use Kudu. Continue. So it's saying it's going to deploy to my master branch. I say, yeah, that's fine. And finish, right? So it's setting up that deployment. While it's doing this, I'm going to come back here and switch to my master branch. So remember, I'm on dev. I'm going to say git checkout master. And then I'm going to merge the files from dev into master. So I'm going to say git merge dev. And now I have the files on dev on master too. If I say ls src, and now I see my estate app here. Awesome. I'll come back here and just give it a bit of a time. It's still working here. It says fetching deployment data. Just clear this, close this. Now I'm going to take this URL here. I'll just copy this URL here, and then I'll come to the root of my GitHub repo, of my Git repo, and I'll say git remote add Azure, and then I paste in that link and hit enter. So I said git remote add Azure, and with this single line of code, I have linked my Azure Web App. Like with this simple line of code, I have linked my Azure Web App with my local Git repo. And now each time I say git push origin, or no, sorry, each time I say git push Azure, so when I want to push to GitHub, I say git push origin, then master. So let's do this. Now what this command does, git push origin master, like you already know, it pushes to GitHub. If I go to GitHub and look at my master branch, let's look at the master branch. You see, it has been updated. But when I want to push to my web app, when I want the codes that I have locally to reflect in my web app, what I do, I say git push Azure, and that's it. All right. It's going to ask for a username and password. Now, what username and password is it asking for? It's not asking for your GitHub username and password, so don't mistakenly type that in here. It's asking for this details here. So I'm going to delete this when I'm done. But it's asking for these details here. So I'm going to click deployment credentials, and then I'll copy the username here. So this is auto-generated. I didn't fill it. I didn't create it. Azure created it for you. Copy, paste in the username. What's going on? I'm not sure why that copy isn't working. I'll try to do it manually. So copy, And then the password, I'll copy the password too. All right, so I have both of those, right? And I just hit OK and see what's going on in my terminal. Authentication failed. I think something did not copy correctly. I'm just going to repeat this. It's probably a good thing that this happened, because it might happen to some of you. So now each time I try to push, it's not going to ask for my username and password. It's just going to try to use those ones I had problems with. Some of you might not have this problem. Some of you might. If you do have this problem, come to your stats and search for Credentials Manager. Click on Credentials Manager and go to Windows Credentials. And like this is where it saves my username and password. I'm just going to clear this. So I just say remove. Yes, I want you to remove it. And then the next time I try to push this, instead of telling me authentication failed, it's going to ask for the username and password again. I'm going to copy this again. And this time I'm actually going to show this and just copy it. I'm not sure why it's not copying correctly. Come on. Something wrong with my Control C. Show. Don't tell me I have to type this in. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to inspect this. Open it up. I'm not sure why I can't copy it. You shouldn't have this problem. This is probably just specific to my system. I'm just going to try to find another way to get it out of there, because I really can't type all of that. Interesting. I still can't copy it. This is wild. I find this really interesting, but I can't copy it out of there. I can't highlight it. I'm just going to copy everything here. Open to and paste it in here and get the password. I mean, I don't expect that you guys will have to do all of this. It's probably just my system acting up. And I'll go okay. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it works now. It has pushed this to Azure. Sorry, we had to take so much time. All right, so it's updating the master branch. It's just going to do some work here. And let's just let all of this run. Meanwhile, we'll come to this deployment center, and we see it was showing no deployment here before, but now it's showing something is actually going on. We can open up the logs. Logs are very important parts of application. It lets you know what's going on, and we just see all of that happening here. We're going to give it some time to finish. Okay, it says deployment successful. Let's confirm that that's the same here. So success. Let's see if this changes. Okay, not yet. Probably need some more time. Come on, when do you change? Okay, awesome. We see that it has changed to the application we created. And that's it, guys. It's really straightforward. I mean, for the work you would do now, you can just deploy like this. And the next time you make some change to your website, let's go in here and make a change. I'm going to come to the layout file. So I'll go to views, www roots, views shared layout, and I'll just come up here. Let's put a space between estate and app, right? Estate, or let's just make it estate application instead of estate app, right? And note that what we have here is estate app. I'm changing it to estate application on the title, and I'm going to change it on the navigation bar to estate application to estate application. So we're just simulating. So estate application, awesome. Now all I have to do is come to my git and say git add dot git commit updated application name. Now I'm going to push it to GitHub first because I want this change to be in GitHub. Git push origin master, and this is going to take it to GitHub, not to Azure. So when I push to GitHub, notice our application will not be updated yet. We still have the same app because we pushed that change to GitHub. To push it to Azure, we're going to say git push Azure. And then we see we're pushing that change to Azure now. If we come to Azure again, we see another deployment is starting. It says pending, preparing deployment, and all of that. And we see our commit message even shows here. It says updated application name. Awesome. And we're just going to wait for this to finish. We see that it's running here too. And let's see if it's done here. It says success. It might take a while to reflect here. We're just going to refresh it a couple of times. Oh, I closed Azure. That was a mistake. Okay, so we have estate application, so it's updated. So that's the flow. So you change something in your application, or you add a new feature, you update. You can take this URL and look at it on your phone or in a browser or wherever, or send it to your friends, and there you have your application. In fact, if you want to show off, you can take some of the smaller apps you built, maybe the calculator app or the guessing app you built with the browser or any of that, and just put it on Azure for free and give the link to people to try out. Let them know, hey guys, I'm becoming a software engineer. What do you guys think of my app? So that's it for this video. It was very quick how to so what we looked at is we created our project and then we pushed it to Azure. In the next video, we're going to add database. In the next video, we're going to add a database to our project. We're going to look at how to work with database and add a database to Azure. So because when we work with a database on our system, that database remains on our system. So then what do we do about a database when we have pushed our application to Azure? And that's what we're going to be looking at in our next video. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.